How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I'm finally going to go and review this thing, the Pacific P512 PF. I honestly thought I'd already reviewed it, but yeah, there we go, I hadn't, so yeah, we'll put it through its paces and see what she's got. So first up, we'll go to the engines. Good thing is, I mean, it's S plus on the power, that's kind of all I need to see, so that's the engine I'll be keeping. The gearboxes, I'm going for the high range. It's got the balanced off-road fine tune. I still prefer the high range. There's no suspension, it's just stock, and the tyres, there's one option, it's that. So there's no chained or anything like that. Winches, gone for the most powerful. Diffs, it has got engageable diffs, so I've put them on. Spare wheel, I mean, I don't really like that whole setup anyway, so I never really take that. The Snorkels, it's got these two, we'll get to them later. Well, long story short, they're not quite working properly. For now, though, I've just kept like the colour-coded sort of normal filters on, because I quite like the look of them. For stuff you can add on the back, pretty much everything, I believe. It can even have like the metal detector, the seismic vibrator thing, sideboards, repair things, all sorts. As for roof, yeah, little roof thing, roof, sun protector or whatever, sun visor. What's they called? Front bumpers. I've actually gone for, I believe it's the stock one. That's probably the closest in terms of like being the most out the way, but I just quite like the front of the truck looks pretty cool, so I'm not putting a big bull bar thing over it at the minute. And again, with like these things, I mean, the horns, parking lights, I've gone for the square. They look a bit sleeker. The fog light, the roof lights, exhaust, and that. I think I went back to the stock ones because the heat shielded ones looked less chromy. So yeah, I wasn't liking them as much. And as for the colours, I like that colour a lot. I think I keep that for most of the video. I like that. I like that. I like that. And that one I don't dislike at all, but I'd say it'd probably be my last choice out of all the sort of unique paint jobs that you can get. So yeah, we'll go and check it out. And I mean, I do like the look of it, to be honest. It's just, yeah, to me, like an old school American looking truck. I know it's Canadian, but yeah, compared to like over here in England, pretty much everything is cab overs. Interior look, pretty old school looking thing. I believe it said in the description it was built in like the 70s. The mirror though wasn't too bad, and even on the mirror that side I can see my tyres. When I look out the back, the exhaust is blocking my view a bit, but I can see the tyres. There's a window out the back as well, so I could see behind me and everything. I've put a cabin protector on. I rarely put them on, but it actually sits very nice and flush on this truck. As for the revs, they seem to build very slowly, and I believe it went up to, it's really hard to read the numbers on the rev counter, but I believe it went up to like 2,750 revs, pretty much. Can't find it, grind it. And yeah, like as I say, it's not all-wheel drive. That's the big thing with this, I suppose. But so I kind of had my bar set for what I was expecting from it. Like I wasn't expecting miracles because of that. Trailer-wise, again, I believe it can have every single trailer. It can have saddle high, saddle low, and then obviously all the towable ones as well. So I don't think there's anything it misses out on there. And yeah, I mean, it motors up to speed pretty nicely. I think with the tyres 51 inch, so not too bad, about the same size as the Tiger and the Dolphin and that. But they appear to be unique tyres, so I assume they're going to be a similar situation to like the P16, the Cat 770G. And they're going to have like slightly upped stats compared to normal. And for the most part, I'm happy keeping these tyres, especially if they are kind of unique ones. But yeah, the lack of chained or anything is limiting. I was pretty impressed with how well it got through here, considering it hasn't even got the fronts kind of trying to claw their way through there themselves. Towards the end it got a bit bogged down there, and it was best off to drop it into auto. But yeah, I expected it to absolutely, like, as soon as the front end got in there, I thought it'd just go down to a couple of mile an hour, and I'd probably have to stick it in low range with the diffs on. Because yeah, apart from no all-wheel drive, it's not got diffs permanently on either, so you've got to drop it in the low ranges to get that. I mean, motoring up here, it's going pretty decently, really. There's a lot of trucks, some I would say even with all-wheel drive and stuff, that struggle a lot more motoring through there. I mean, the Derry definitely wasn't this fast, the 4520. And I can imagine, to be honest, it'll be a pretty nice truck overall on these kind of maps, the Michigan maps. I've always enjoyed the Michigan maps anyway. Yeah, they tend to... Obviously, I get the point to a degree of this game, is the whole terrain and it being against you and that, but at the same time, it's still nice to just have that be a secondary feature and yeah, just enjoy the drive and go for a cruise. I forgot to do the horn when I was when I got outside the garage, but yeah, that's the horn. Out of all of them, to be honest, it's probably the nicest horn out of the new trucks. coming down here, hitting the trees. To be honest, well, I got 2 there. Couldn't quite get the last one, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I actually, yeah, I'm fairly happy with that, as it hasn't got the all-wheel drive, and I wouldn't say it strikes me as particularly the heaviest truck. It's not ridiculously light, but it's probably, yeah, represented like a little bit lighter than I imagine it would be in real life, considering it's like a fairly bigger, or slightly bigger version of a lot of the other trucks with a similar setup. Cutting through there, I mean, again, considering it's not got all-wheel drive, it's not too bad. Picks up random damage here and there, nothing special compared to just, yeah, anything can. Who knows when it decides to hit you with that. But as you can see, I mean, it's ploughing down here with little to no issues, really. So next up, flying over the rocks. And I mean, it's taking little hits. It's got a nice pace going to it now in the high range, so it's certainly going fast enough to where it can pick up damage. And I believe the whole way through, I even swerve, make sure I hit that big, fat, juicy, meaty rock. And yeah, I mean, I keep taking little ones here and there, but again, I quite like that, if anything, because I like the whole damage mechanic thing anyway, and yeah, I just put that down to kind of wear and tear of rallying over the rocks. I would rather rally over the rocks at that speed than be crawling. May not be the same story if I had a trailer and everything behind me. Nearly flipped off there. Clipped that barricade though. It did some damage. Again, they do. Like I say, what's the point of them? Like, what is it they expect us to do? Because even if you drive at them at 2 miles an hour and just nudge them over, they start going under your wheels and get caught, and they can delete your suspension and all sorts. And it's like, yeah, I'm not just going to not go this way because a breakable sign told me not to. I mean, cutting through here, everything's pretty slow at the beginning anyway, but again, I didn't have particularly high hopes. I mean, it is ticking through, to be fair, and maybe it'd handle a trailer through there, but personally, yeah, if I had to cut through here, I would either have some kind of road ferry thing, like Cat 745C or something, to pull me across, or I'd probably just bring something else. But for just about everything else flying around Michigan, this would be a pretty nice truck to use. I mean, if anything, it is bordering on a highway truck, really. I know it says in the description that it's kind of built for off-highway use, and I get that, like down the dirt paths and everything, it was just fine. Some of the little mud sections, nothing crazy. But yeah, in terms of like the no all-wheel drive, no diffs unless you put it in low and that, it's sort of bridges the gap, I suppose, between highway and the fully off-road stuff. I was quite happy that it got its front wheels over there, because again, they're not actually biting down into the barrier. But halfway between its 2 rear axles, there's like, you can sort of see the suspension frame and everything, and it seems to catch on that, and it wasn't too happy about it. It couldn't even push its front tyres up over these, not until I flung a winch out. You can see the other tyre marks where I had a bit of a go. I was trying to get this thing again under 40 minutes if I could. And yeah, when I used the winch I could get over there, but it is what it is. I would have thought chained in that situation would well, long story short, chained on this entire map would be of a benefit, because you've got the slippy roads and all sorts, but yeah, climbing over those barriers, the chains essentially, it seems to add like little lumps to your tyres that physically hook onto the, say, the top of the barrier. And again, with rocks, when you're climbing rocks, the chain are good for that. Yeah, a lot of tyres in this game just act kind of like they are, I suppose, but you know, just completely smooth round tyres, so there's nothing to grip on. It'll just wheel spin next to the barrier, whereas the chain just seemed to work pretty well for that. It cut through that snowy section back there. Yeah, I mean, it was slow, but again, for not all-wheel drive, it's I think some trucks, particularly the non-all-wheel drive stuff, struggled pretty badly up there. It wasn't doing too well here, and it probably would have tipped there, but I flung a winch out and saved it. I got down here, but again, you'll see, I'm sure it starts to tip, and yeah, I flung whatever, another winch out and saved it. So not amazing in that situation. So jump in the wall though, it's one of my favourite pastimes. Maybe I could have, like, I reckon given it enough goes, I'd probably be able to clear that in one, or at least get the first set of rear axles over. But the important thing is it was able to flick the front up, so it actually did jump rather than just stubbing its face into the pipes. Yeah, bit of winching, again nearly tipped as I was kind of getting over, but just saved it at the last minute with a winch. So coming here to try the old tree section. definitely gone down, yeah, low range diffs on for this one. And yeah, I mean, I have to say, to be fair, because it's certainly not the smallest truck, it sits reasonably tall, etc. Some of the really small stuff does slip through there pretty easy, but that's what she said. Yeah, the bigger stuff, like the taller stuff, catches on a lot of those branches. It got stuck as I was driving further up there, but I'll be doing the mountain test later anyway. But yeah, all things considered, it got through there, so it's pretty good. Cargo test. I am turning now pretty much the whole time. It just, again, without chain, there's no grip on the icy tarmac. And overall, it hasn't got a great turning circle, to be honest. I noticed that the other sort of day or week or whatever when I was driving it on the new maps. Yeah. I mean, partly that is because there is no drive at the front. As I said, the fronts aren't like aiming to the side and physically pulling your front end round. You're just waiting for the back end to keep pushing and essentially like scuff the fronts into the ground until they start turning. So it's just a worse situation to have, and it results in like a bit of a bigger turning circle. But it's a slightly longer truck anyway compared to a few others, so it probably scaled up would have a slightly longer turning circle. Use that post, swung myself around because again it's slightly wider turning circle. I was having none of it. Here, to be honest, I thought it'd get stuck here now. But low range diffs on, it actually started creeping over, and overall, because it is a slightly bigger truck, it appears that the the sideboard semi-trailer sits high enough to where those rails that run down either side aren't catching on that little sort of snow hump I'm driving over. There's that bloody root that's sticking out the mud. Again, I'm certain that never used to be there. And then about 35 odd reviews in, that just appeared for no reason. And it started catching all kinds of things out. But again, even by now, I was surprised it got as far as it did, and I could start flinging winches out now to the pole on the right, or maybe even reach the one that's like on the left corner by now. But yeah, I kind of wanted to see if it could make it, and yeah, to its credit, it did. I was pretty happy with that. That's probably the unique tyres that are helping there. Again, stuck a winch out, helped tighten my turning circle, but it doesn't try and tip while I was doing that, which is nice. And it fired up into high now, which a decent amount of the other trucks struggle getting into high going down here, particularly with the semi-trailer and the full cargo and everything. And it gets a bit slow here. Pretty much everything does, even if it can get into high or not, but this does pretty well at not stalling. You can near enough get stopped and it'd rather wheel spin than stall. And yeah, just kept flooring it though, and eventually it found like a bit better grip and fired back up to speed. I got to look for somewhere to park my trailer now. Get fair soon we'll be in the water down there or something. Cut that bit out, but yeah, we parked it there. Job's good, and I did have a bit of help from the trees, kind of winching myself through that thick snow. Cutting through the water, slows down a bit there where it goes from like shallow to deep to shallow. That's pretty normal. And yeah, I mean, not bad. Kind of 7 out of 10. I've seen better go through there, but I've also seen worse, and again, without the all-wheel drive, that's not a bad effort. It's nice now. Look, I mean, I'm still in the high range and I'm still able to blip the throttle. Just died at the end there. I did especially in this snow, it's probably was enough to tip it over the edge. But yeah, that was pretty nice. It got through that gap with pretty, well, like no issues. But I was going to say the rear axles look like they might be a tad wider than that gap in total. But yeah, I had no issue kind of just crawling them over the side. It's certainly not ridiculously wide. The P16 had to pretty much go diagonally, I think it was, to fit through there. And yeah, got me up into high again, blipping the throttle. A little bit iffy with the turning circle again. It would be nice to have a slightly tighter turning circle. This patch of snow here, it was like the original super snow. Pretty much everything gets slowed down to this speed on this one little tiny section. So again, that's not the end of the world. Things have got through slower than that, so. And I forgot to put it into, yeah, interior view. I nearly went on, but long story short, I had to turn back or reverse so we can go and do it again. So yeah, interior view, as far as like blocking my view with a hood or bonnet or whatever you want to call it, not too bad. I mean, I've still got that, like, you know, down in the bottom left corner where it kind of, there's like a notch missing where the bonnet doesn't cover the full windscreen. So yeah, pretty similar to normal ones. Overall, like, it looks like you sit reasonably high, so it's certainly not the worst one for blocking your horizon and everything. But the fact that there is a big hood sticking out the front is not the best either. Like, obviously ones that are just essentially a cab over, there's nothing there. Actually managed to kind of deck it into the environment on the other side. It only took a little hit. And maybe if I'd lined up a little better, I don't know, but I'm not bothered. It was fine. It still drove up there, no issues. Even the fact that the fronts can't power themselves up there as well, and it still had no problems. By the time you get into mud like this, yeah, you're best off dropping it down into auto, but you can see as soon as I did, it's still reasonably comfortably getting itself out of there. So yeah, overall, I mean, so far it's one of them when I've been driving it. I like doing these review videos because then I get a very good feel for what they're like compared to everything else, because it's the same courses, the same things I'm doing. Yeah, I had a feeling the other week when I was driving it, like, yeah, I kind of like this, and it seems not one of the best trucks because it hasn't got all-wheel drive, but it does seem pretty decent for not having all-wheel drive. It's a little bit like a smaller version of the P16. Like, I think that's a very good truck for being one that's not got all-wheel drive as well. And yeah, I mean, even getting over that rock bridge there was a few, it's bumping your way up those sort of edges that worry me when you've not got all-wheel drive, because you sort of need the fronts to claw their way up, but it still got up and over there, so there's enough power in the rear to just, yeah, force it up. Definitely sounds like something she'd say. Cutting through here, I mean, I couldn't really get into high. There's little patches where you can blip it up into high, but for the most part it was best off in auto. But it can actually go through snow, which is nice, and even cutting through here, I did actually roll it there the first time, getting over that tree stump. The front got over the tree stump fine, it was the back axles, so I kind of recovered to garage, drove back here, did a loop round, and yeah, it was a costly roll. But it did get through there, stick it back into high, and we're flying along again. So yeah, for non-all-wheel drive, so far it's kind of holding its own pretty well. And like I said, I kind of have my own bar set depending on what truck it is, how much it costs, what setups they've got, etc, etc. And yeah, I was never thinking this is going to be like, going to be knocking, you know, the Tiger and the Dolphin off the top spot or anything. I mean, nothing's going to knock the goddamn horsepower vehicle off the top spot, but yeah, it's, considering what I was expecting from it, it's kind of punching above that at the minute, which I like. I was pretty amazed by this point. I thought it'd be an absolute disaster through here. Pretty much everything that is an all-wheel drive is sketchy here. The P16 can go through there pretty well, because it's just so meaty and heavy, it kind of helps. But yeah, I was pretty amazed by now that even as I'm cutting over from the edge as well into like the little deeper sort of pond sections where you can actually see the water pooling, and you can even see the front wheels barely turning. It's kind of just being rammed through the mud with the rear tyres. And overall, I don't really think there's a lot of weight on the rear tyres. Not as like rear weighted as some things are, so yeah. I mean, again, maybe it's the unique sort of tyre stats or whatever, but that is genuinely pretty good. Even some of the all-wheel drive stuff doesn't like going this far over into the mud, and the fact that this thing, I mean, I cut a few bits out because you could see it was pretty slow, but you can see my path through there. It was definitely not skirting along the edge, and yeah, that was pretty impressive. So next up, into the old mountains. For places like this, chained isn't as detrimental with not having them, but yeah, it's the roads mainly where you just understeer city, and yeah, they just struggle. And it's a little bit slow again. I am kind of trying to shove that front end around everywhere. It's not actually giving me any assistance. And to a degree, I think this is a little bit tippy, not crazy, but you can see, I mean, it was close. And there has, been a fair chunk of trucks that have done the same, or at least considered it there. Fortunately, it did actually roll back over to its wheels, which was pretty nice. I'll give it another go. And it's pretty bloody close at that point to wanting to go again. Probably now as well. That's about as far as you're going to get over without it tipping. But I mean, it's one of them. I certainly wouldn't volunteer this thing to be first up for climbing up in these mountains. Obviously, I'm doing it just to see what it does compared to the others. So I never had particularly high hopes. Kind of the nose test there. Not amazing, but it's a yeah, bit of a steep one. And again, maybe if it had all-wheel drive, it might sort of bite the front end in and lift it back up. But I think when you're just trying to shove it from the back, it's just like planting its face into that other side of the snowbank, because there's not really anything to get it going back up. And like I said, yeah, I mean, this wouldn't be my first choice for motoring through here, but it's just about scraping by. If it had to be done, I could have made it up here and whatever. See, now that's where, like, no wheel drive, the front started to go and I just had nothing to be able to fight it back, so I kind of accidentally flew down there a bit. Was trying to get back up there, and it rolled. It kind of sat on its roof like that for a little while. It eventually tipped back sort of the way it came. But after many, many minutes of messing around, I brought Taiga quickly, just got it all sorted. It got hooked in those trees for ages. I didn't bring the loaf this time, I don't really know why. I just kind of autopilot, jumped in the Taiga, set off, and yeah. But fortunately, the Taiga didn't roll on its way here. It was bloody close at one point as well, so I nearly regretted my decision not to bring the horse. Yeah, when it rolled nicely, I think it went twice, and then it actually got back to its own wheels. It's not that bad at getting back to its own wheels. It's one of them. It's funny. It's like, it's not amazing for not tipping, but it's not that bad. But the amount of times for me it has rolled back to its wheels have been kind of reasonable. So I wouldn't go as far as to say it's like weighted in the roof. It's just probably that overall it's not that heavy, and it's just kind of evenly spread everywhere, so yeah, the base of the truck, the chassis is not really trying to fight it tipping over, but at the same time the roof's not trying to fight it when it rolls back to its wheels. A little bit sketchy up there. I'm kind of happy that it managed it in the end though. Still slowly trying to jig it over to the left, which can be a bit iffy there, because some of them can roll. And yeah, I mean, it's struggling, but that's what you get when you've got a whole axle that's not doing anything. But just by the skin of its teeth. It's a bit, as far as beaching it goes as well, it's, in theory, it shouldn't be great for being beached. And yeah, there's definitely situations where you could beach it, because it's got a relatively long wheelbase. But it's also got, again, sort of, if you scale it up, it's like, it's got decent enough, like the suspension sits high enough, even though it's only stock suspension as well. But yeah, again, it gets away with it. The fuel tanks don't sit ridiculously low or anything like that, so overall, not too bad. We rolled down there, I mean, that'll... I was impressed it got as far as it did, as it was kind of crawling along the top edge of the mountain. So, next up, we're at, Zimnegorsk, about to go to Quarry. Of course, we've got a goddamn professional with us. And just to show you, look, I'm in high gear, you accelerate, and it says stalling for a second, but the loaf now is shoving me from behind, boost starting it, and then when I finally fire up in high, I'm away. And yeah, I admit, I wasn't looking where I was going. And I did hit a lamppost thing. But that's not the point. Should have had another Captain Loaf at the front, keeping a watch out. And again, motoring through that section is pretty nice. It's this one really where it separates the yeah, the good ones from the bad ones. And it's definitely getting a little bit slow, but I have always got the low range diffs on option, which yeah, I tend to avoid as much as possible, just because it's, I'm fine using them. I use them all over the place, but if it's going to be guaranteed that slow anyway, I may as well risk it and keep it in auto. Unless auto pretty much is on, yeah, it's just not working, then I'll drop it in the low range diffs on. So flying down here though, no real issues, hit a few bumps and that, took a little bit of damage but nothing special. Didn't get too erratic or crazy down there. I mean, Jesus Christ. Some people are leaving mess all over the place. Good job on me, really. As you can see, I like to keep my maps nice and tidy. Yeah, got down the ledge though, no issues. Flying through here, again, pretty damn well considering it's not all-wheel drive. Starts getting slowed down about now by these sort of patches, which is fair. It does catch quite a few out there, but it's still able to keep going. I'm also kind of ramming it back into high as soon as I could, trying to get a little run up for bagging them. Well, yeah, it didn't go amazingly well. Low range diffs on time. And it's a bit of a lucky dip as far as you go down there. Like, sometimes there's big awkward rocks. It does appear they might have removed a few rocks. There used to be some pretty meaty ones, juicy and meaty on the old rock scale. And yeah, that used to catch out quite a lot of things, particularly hooking on the trailers. But it appears they've kind of realised that that was a bit of a trollish thing to do, to stick a load of big rocks in the one little patch where you need to collect cement blocks or whatever. So yeah, sent the horse up there just as like a mobile winch point, just in case, because again, this is not amazing for not tipping, so I wasn't sure about now if it'd want to just start flopping over to the right. It's not having it in auto, but low range diffs on and it starts creeping up. At this point I was like, well, I don't know. The big test will be this little like jumping from the first hill to the second, because yeah, it'll do that. It'll make it wheelie. And it's like, is all that weight being held out going to kind of slam them rear axles in so much that they just stop then? But it, again, just about scraped its way through. Didn't even need the loaf, which is, again, relatively rare. More of them have needed it than not. Back in the day, the loaf was the only time what was it, Derry 4520 could not even get up that first quarry hill, except for once when the loaf pulled it up there. And that is why you get yourself a loaf. Well, it's pulled just about every single thing up there. You've seen the colob. You got the colob and a trailer up there. Just didn't move. Winch to it and it was just bang. It's on its way. He's a goddamn professional. Some kind of special superpowers or something. Loaf powers. Yeah, I mean, it looked a little bit sketchy for a second when I was going past that telegraph pole thing. It looked like it might tip, but it didn't. And again, I'm sending the loaf up because I need the winch point. I was very sceptical that that thing would be getting up here. So, I mean, look at the loaf. He flies up there like a professional. A glitch, of course. Even the computer couldn't comprehend what it was seeing. And he's there. In his little loaf hole. Yeah, I mean, most trucks struggle. Even stuff like, I don't even think the Dolphin got up here. The Colobs couldn't get up here. Nearly everything can't get up here. And the fact that this hasn't got all-wheel drive was definitely going to cost it. So yeah, pretty soon into low-range diffs on it's going to be the best option with this, as far as grip goes and everything. I think the game gives you some kind of grip bonus or something when you stick it in the low ranges. But yeah, it was juddering there. It was having none of it. I believe it might have even been wheel spinning rather than just fully stopped. Give it a little roll back, tried to go again, but yeah, that is just spinning. Which is basically game over, and I wasn't surprised, but loaf for the win. Fling a winch out. He digs deep in his little loaf hole. And he gets me up there. Like a goddamn horse or a vehicle every time. See, once you start getting higher than the loaf though, it kind of pulls him back out the loaf hole. So I'm aiming for those trees. Yes, things went well. And I kind of considered this at half pass. I originally probably would consider it a fail, obviously it sort of is. It didn't get up the hill, but considering 90% of trucks or more need the loaf to get them up there, if it can get high enough that it can reach the loaf, and then the loaf can get it to the top where it can reach the trees, I kind of consider that its own sort of plan B win. I mean, again, not a lot gets up there. Bruce, the goddamn professional, he flew up there with no issues whatsoever, with a trailer, with concrete slabs the lot. But yeah, he was one of the few. And again, I was even able to get fast enough along here to go in high at Probably won't mean a lot to a lot of people, but I've been through there a lot of the times in the same setup, and trying to get to high along that little section is not easy. Come flying down here. I believe I can fly. Slams down, bit of a dodgy bounce, and we're gone. But it was fun. There's the main thing, looking around now like, is it time for the beast? It is. He's going in. I mean, look at him. Just walks up that rock. That rock's about as tall as him. He's on the top diving board, and he's going for it. Lands it like a boss, doesn't even roll. Flings his back end round, probably ready to attach that trailer, but I didn't need it. He's got his own fuel. And we're away, look at him go. So, I was curious. I mean, to be fair, this P512 thing is not the heaviest of trucks, but as far as winch points go, I think it's got one at the front, one at the back, two in the middle, but they kind of sit quite narrow on the chassis, so it doesn't really help. I mean, look, again, with a loaf hole, he's digging it right now as we speak. Long story short, the loaf just dragged the P512 and the trailer all the way up the quarry hill on its side like this. I mean, look, he's rearing up, but he's not having it. He is sat. I mean, let's be honest, his ass has officially entered that quarry now, just to keep himself wedged in. Yeah, long story short, I moved the logging trailer that I abandoned the other week in there, and yeah, rolled him. Dodged a bullet. Does his horn. Good job. Mission complete. So next up, what are we on? Lake Coved. Going for the ice test. I had a bad feeling about this. No front wheel drive. It's going to be like, as soon as that breaks through, it's not going to go well. I apologise. Was there a little glitch there? Either way, as you can see, we basically drove in. Things started to crunch. Went very slow. The left side wheel's gone in. Or right side as we're looking at it. Yeah, as soon as that wheel starts breaking in, I would be like, yeah, that's game over. However, a little bit like with the Devil's Mud section in Northport, I would say it eventually got stuck. And I did try for a good 2 or 3 minutes longer than I'm going to leave in here. But the fact that it is even still going forward now, it's pretty impressive. And there's a possibility they have slightly adjusted something as far as the ice goes, because it doesn't seem to catch like it used to. But nonetheless, that's still pretty decent. Like, I can't knock that. So, give it a little smack out with the twin steer, and look at it. Go mad, slap me back. It's not often I get slapped back by a truck. I think it tried to me to me or something, I don't know. I was looking around at the twin steer like, god damn. It's temperamental little beast when you're trying to help it out the ice. But yeah, I don't know what it was doing. It looks pretty twisted up. Tried to reverse under it. Normally they drop when you go near them, but it wasn't, so I switched to it. It did a barrel roll, and yeah, that was about it. I went for Jeff's special, but it was all smashed up, and I'm going to do one a little bit later anyway. So, we'll move on. Yeah, this is a quick little one that ended up being a test. Flooded foothills, cutting through this river section, because I stubbornly didn't build the bridge to my left for like a month or so. I took everything through this section. 8 slot trailers, just all sorts, too much. That's a bait Scout 800. He tests for map glitches. We leave him in there when there's an update. Well, say we leave him in there when there's I've left him in there since about phase 2 or 3. Whenever we've got these maps, he's lived there. And yeah, again, I mean, it actually got through the river, and even these mud sections, unless they've dialed this down, which, I don't know, I can't imagine them doing something like that, because they seem to be dialing it up left, right and centre everywhere else, but yeah, I'm kind of staying to the side of the mud, but it was motoring along there pretty nice. Got pretty well deleted. It goes ridiculously slow through there, but just about everything does anyway, so that is definitely a super mud section. And yeah, going along here, I mean, it's motoring along very nicely, but again, with the glitches, man, I apologise. Fortunately, I didn't miss that bit out. Yeah, with no kind of powered front end, it's kind of understeering, kicking out to the side, and I went wide, and we flipped. I'm on White Valley now. Just while I was here, I thought I'll stick a logging trailer on quickly. We'll get a tiny little bit of logging footage, see what it's like. It's quite nice. I could kind of do a drive-by log loading. Kept it in high. Not anymore though. Low range diffs on moment. So here the revs just vanish. Like, that's partly why I don't really use it unless I need it. Even if it's the correct thing to use, that doesn't really bother me. Rally special, that's the correct gear to use. But again, once we got out of that, kind of kept tapping it in auto, got it into high pretty quick. Got a bit sketchy there. Oh no, I have gone back down to auto. I had a gear change though. I'll have to go through and delete a load of footage again. It seems to be glitching like a madman tonight. But yeah, I mean, again, it hauls logs reasonably well, even now in the snow and everything. I've gone through some mud sections. I mean, yeah, it's not the best. I did a few logging missions the other week on Black Badger Lake, and it was going alright. Right, long story short, I stuck a loaf on there and you're able to pack it on the logs. However, when I flew off the cliff, it blue screened the crap out of me, like instantly. I flew off the cliff, as soon as I touched the floor, it was like, nope. It was the most convincing blue screen I've ever seen. So, unfortunately, loaf and P512 log flying was, yeah, had to abandon mission. This thing, though, flying off on its own, that was the Jeff Special, and it got in there and it did pretty well. It flew pretty far. That's not a bad effort. That's probably like top 5 best distances. I flew off that. It's the first time ever. It rolled so quickly, it stalled and disconnected the winch before the loaf even came off the cliff with it. That's like the only time that's ever happened. And then normally, if I didn't bring the goddamn horse of a vehicle, I'd have to recover the P512 and attempt it again. But look at him. He goes for it. What a goddamn beast. The loaf, ladies and gentlemen. Get yourself a loaf. Never mind this P512. Get one of them if you've got some spare money, but whatever you do, get yourself a loaf. Because he is a goddamn beast. Oh yeah, I went to go and do the drowning test, realised I forgot to put the snorkels on. So we came back. Again, it glitched there, but it was just a horrifically bad, like, slid off the cliff. Look at it, like a dying slug. Slowly slipping its way down the cliff. Camera swings towards the loaf. You know what time it is. So, yeah, well, the good news is, see, there is a method to my madness. Dragging it down there, it's not like its exhausts are getting hooked in like crazy. It is actually slipping along. So, that was good news. And then, yeah, we'll go for flipping it, which, like I said, I mean, the loaf's flipped every single truck to exist in this game so far, so I wasn't really, yeah, getting in a sweat worrying about this thing. And, of course, the horse achieved his goal. Yeah, going in here, you see all that effort to recover and change for the snorkels, and they don't bloody work. At this point, I was like, oh no. Reversing out, I mean, you can imagine where, like, the normal air filters sit on the side of the truck. Essentially like those little snorkel pipes just being cut off. It starts taking damage, yeah, about now, which will probably be on, like, the left one, because that's leaning over a little bit deeper, but yeah, so for now, the snorkels are basically a waste of time, and I mean, it's not the end of the world, because it's, again, like a reasonably decent-sized truck. It sits tall enough that you ain't going to want to be going through water much deeper than that's, like, up to its bonnet or something anyway, so. And I didn't go for the repair, I'm just going in now for the drowning test, only because if the snorkels were working, I would have, but I was thinking it'll stall and just die anyway before. Yeah, it's like, it's without the snorkel situation, it's just a pointless test. It was going to drown or just kill itself anyway. Yeah, well, so in conclusion, I mean, yeah, I actually think it's not bad. There is things about it I quite like, and I have been using it every now and then, and I probably will some more. I mean, they certainly need to fix the snorkels, and some chains would be nice, but apart from that, the unique kind of tyres seem to be getting it along pretty well. And yeah, overall, it's not been a bad night of testing. Like I said, it's I don't know, 7 out of 10. Kind of, it's not competing with the best of the best. Pretty expensive. It was that like 173 grand by the time I've done it all up. It was about 135 grand stock, which yeah, it's pretty expensive. But again, by now, it's not really the end of the world. There's enough paying missions on those maps to pay for it. There's just a little description saying it's like an off-highway truck built in the 70s and all that, and yeah, and it can have all sorts of add-ons. So yeah, overall, I'd recommend giving it a go. And that's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that helps. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreon members, and I'll be back soon.